"Get your filthy hands off that door." The shout cracked through the Ridgemont precinct lobby like a whip. Every conversation stopped. A young mother sitting near the complaint desk pulled her little boy closer. Two officers near the coffee machine turned to look. Officer Brenda Holloway stepped in front of the glass entrance, one hand planted against it, the other gripping her duty belt. "You smell like a sewer rat," she snapped. "People like you do not belong in this building." The woman at the door froze for half a second. Not from fear. From restraint. She was tall, African-American, mid-40s, wearing a charcoal coat damp from the rain outside. No jewelry except a simple silver watch. No makeup. No police uniform. Just a worn leather briefcase hanging from one hand. Water dripped from the edge of her sleeve onto the polished tile floor. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "I am trying to enter the station." Brenda laughed once. Sharp. Cruel. "Then try somewhere else." She shoved the door harder. "This precinct is not a homeless shelter." A few people chuckled nervously. Most looked away. The woman tightened her grip on the briefcase. Her knuckles turned pale for 1 second, then relaxed again. "Officer," she said carefully, "I have every right to be here." "Rights?" Brenda stepped closer. Her badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "You think trash like you has rights in my station? Have you ever watched someone decide who mattered before hearing a single word from them?" The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and wet jackets. A television mounted in the corner played muted local news while rain hammered softly against the front windows. Behind the reception desk, an old man waited clutching a stack of eviction papers. Near the vending machines, a teenage girl sat with dried blood on her sleeve. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because everyone in Ridgemont knew the same thing. Officer Brenda Holloway liked power more than she liked people. Officer Craig Dawson leaned against the wall beside the metal detector, arms crossed over his chest. Young. Broad shoulders. Smirk already forming. "Come on, Brenda," he said loudly enough for half the room to hear. Maybe she got lost looking for the bus station. A couple officers snorted under their breath. The woman ignored him. Her eyes moved slowly across the lobby instead. Security camera above the entrance. Broken water stain near the ceiling vent. Complaint forms scattered crooked beside the front desk. Then her gaze stopped briefly on Brenda's nameplate. Holloway noticed. "What?" she barked. "You planning to file a complaint?" The woman answered softly. "What is your badge number, officer?" Craig laughed harder now. "Oh, this is good." Brenda stepped forward until they were almost nose to nose. "You think you can walk in here looking like that and start questioning me?" The woman's voice stayed calm. "I asked for your badge number." A younger officer behind the desk shifted uneasily. Lena Brooks. 26. Still new enough to feel shame when people got humiliated in front of her. She opened her mouth slightly like she might step in. Brenda caught the movement immediately. "You got something to say, Brooks?" Lena looked down fast. "No, ma'am." Silence again. The woman adjusted the strap of her briefcase. For a split second, the flap lifted open. Lena caught a glimpse of neatly stacked documents inside. Official papers. Thick cream-colored stock. A city seal stamped in blue near the corner. Then the flap closed again. Brenda never noticed. "Last warning," Brenda said. "Turn around and walk out before I drag you out myself." The woman took one slow breath. "I came here to speak with Captain Bryce." Craig pushed off the wall. "Captain Bryce does not meet with people off the street. He will meet with me." Brenda's expression hardened instantly. Something about the certainty in that answer irritated her more than yelling would have. "Listen carefully," she hissed. "You do not walk into my precinct demanding things. The woman's cheek twitched once. Barely visible. Your precinct. A few officers exchanged looks. Wrong thing to say. Brenda's face darkened. You heard me. She jabbed a finger toward the door. Get out. The woman did not move. Craig shook his head dramatically. She thinks she matters. Brenda suddenly slapped the briefcase from the woman's hand. It crashed against the tile floor. Papers shifted inside. The old man near the complaint desk flinched hard enough to drop his eviction notice. The teenage girl near the vending machine stared wide-eyed. Brenda leaned closer. Pick up your trash and leave. The woman slowly bent down. Not rushed. Not trembling. Calm enough to make Brenda even angrier. As she reached for the briefcase, a small red light blinked once beneath the leather flap. Tiny. Easy to miss. Craig did not see it. Brenda did not either. But Lena Brooks did. Her stomach tightened. The woman stood again with the briefcase tucked against her side. Rainwater still glistened on her coat sleeve. Officer Holloway, she said quietly, you should be very careful what happens next. Brenda smiled coldly. Or what? Then she slapped her. Hard. The sound cracked across the lobby like a gunshot. The mother near the complaint desk gasped. Someone near the hallway whispered, Jesus Christ. Craig grinned wide. There it is. Red bloomed slowly across the woman's cheek. She did not touch it immediately. Did not cry. Did not scream. She just looked at Brenda for a long moment that suddenly made the room feel colder. You just made a serious mistake, she said. Brenda laughed directly in her face. The only mistake here is you walking in like you own the place. She shoved the woman backward toward the entrance. Now get out before I put you in cuffs. Lena Brooks took one step forward. Officer Holloway, maybe we should just stay out of it, Brenda snapped instantly. Lena stopped. The woman picked up her briefcase from where it had slipped partly from her arm. One corner had opened slightly during the fall. Inside, tucked beneath the documents, something metallic caught the fluorescent light for half a second. Silver. Star-shaped. Then the flap fell shut again. Nobody seemed to notice except Lena. The woman turned without another word and walked toward the rain-soaked glass doors. People moved aside as she passed. Some embarrassed. Some curious. Most pretending none of this had happened. Brenda called after her loudly enough for the whole lobby to hear. And do not come back. The woman paused at the threshold. Just for 1 second. Rain thundered outside. Somewhere deeper in the station, a phone began ringing over and over unanswered. Then a voice crackled sharply through the overhead intercom. All available officers report to main hall immediately. Repeat, all officers report to main hall immediately. Brenda frowned. Craig straightened slightly. The intercom buzzed again. Captain Bryce says the new chief has arrived. The woman at the door stopped moving. The lobby stayed silent even after the woman stepped into the rain. Nobody followed her. Nobody apologized. Officer Brenda Holloway just rolled her shoulders like the slap meant nothing. But Officer Lena Brooks could not stop staring at the glass doors. The woman had not reacted like normal people did. No screaming. No threats. No panic. Just that long quiet look before she walked away. And that strange silver flash inside the briefcase. Brooks. Brenda's voice snapped across the lobby. You deaf? Lena turned quickly. No, ma'am. Then quit staring at the damn door and get back to work. Craig Dawson smirked while stuffing a powdered donut into his mouth. Probably another scam artist looking for lawsuit money. A few officers laughed. The teenage girl near the vending machine did not. She still held her sleeve against the dried blood on her arm, eyes fixed on the rain outside. Meanwhile, under the gray skies 3 blocks from the precinct, the woman sat alone inside an old black sedan parked beside a closed pharmacy. Rain rolled softly across the windshield. She did not start the engine. Did not touch the red mark spreading across her cheek. Her leather briefcase rested carefully on the passenger seat beside her. One hand stayed on top of it like she was protecting something fragile inside. The city around her blurred beneath rainwater and neon reflections. A siren wailed somewhere far away. Then faded. Slowly, she opened the briefcase. Inside sat neatly organized files, complaint reports, photographs, disciplinary records. On top rested a silver-framed picture of a young black man smiling in a graduation robe. The corner of the frame was cracked. Her thumb brushed gently across his face. "I am trying, Marcus," she whispered. Her voice almost disappeared beneath the rain. 10 years earlier, Marcus Sullivan had been stopped by officers during a traffic search outside Richmond. 22 years old. Honors student. No weapon. No criminal record. The officers wrote, "non-compliant," in their report after they shoved him against a squad car hard enough to fracture his skull. Nobody lost a badge. Nobody lost a job. The department called it procedure. Naomi Sullivan called it the moment her life split in half. She closed the frame carefully and slid it back beneath the files. Another object sat underneath. A polished silver badge wrapped in cloth. She looked at it for one long second. Then covered it again. The phone on the dashboard buzzed suddenly. Captain Bryce. She let it ring twice before answering. "Chief," Bryce stopped himself immediately. "Ma'am. There has been a misunderstanding." Naomi stared through the rain-covered windshield. "A misunderstanding?" Bryce lowered his voice. "Officer Holloway did not know who you were." "Exactly." Silence. Bryce exhaled heavily. "The council members are already arriving. Reporters may hear about this if someone uploaded a video." Naomi glanced toward the precinct in the distance. Someone already did. Across social media, shaky cell phone footage was spreading fast. A black woman in a wet coat being shoved backward near a police station entrance. Comments flooded underneath. Some defended her. Most did not. Trash like that always causes problems. She probably threatened the officers first. Why was she even there? Have you ever been judged guilty before anyone asked your name? Naomi opened another file inside the briefcase. Officer Brenda Holloway. 6 civilian complaints. 2 excessive force allegations. 3 missing body cam segments marked corrupted. 1 witness withdrawal after intimidation concerns. Beside the paperwork rested a tiny digital recorder. Its red light still blinked softly. Every word from the lobby lived inside that device now. Every insult. Every laugh. Every second of silence from the officers who watched. A soft knock suddenly tapped against the driver's window. Naomi looked up sharply. Lena Brooks stood outside in the rain, nervous and soaked through her patrol jacket. Naomi lowered the window halfway. "Officer Brooks." Lena glanced around before speaking quietly. "I should not be here." "Then why are you?" Lena swallowed hard. "Because Holloway crossed the line." For a second, hope flickered between them. Small. Fragile. Human. Lena reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded complaint form. "The security camera above the lobby door," she whispered. "It records audio separately from body cams. Holloway thinks it has been broken for months." Naomi looked at her carefully. "And has it?" Lena hesitated. "I do not know." Before Naomi could answer, Lena's police radio crackled loudly at her shoulder. "Officer Brooks report to main hall immediately. Captain Bryce is waiting." Lena stiffened. Fear rushed back into her eyes. She stepped away from the car fast. "I was never here," she whispered. Then she disappeared back into the rain. Mayami watched her run toward the precinct. On the passenger seat, the tiny recorder kept blinking red. Then her phone buzzed again. This time the message came from an unknown number. "We know who you are now." Another message followed instantly. "Do not walk into that building alone." Mayami's eyes narrowed slightly. Outside, thunder rolled low across the city. Then, from inside the open briefcase, a folded document shifted loose and slid partly into view. Across the top, beneath the city seal, one line stood clearly visible. Appointment of Police Chief, Ridgemont Precinct. Rain hammered the roof of Mayami Sullivan's car while downtown Ridgemont kept moving like nothing had happened. Across the street, people hurried beneath umbrellas. A delivery driver smoked beside a flickering liquor store sign. Somewhere nearby, a train horn echoed through the wet gray afternoon. But inside the precinct 3 blocks away, her face was already becoming a story nobody agreed on. Officer Brenda Holloway stood near the front desk with her phone in one hand. "Look at this," she said loudly. Craig Dawson leaned over her shoulder grinning. The shaky cell phone video from the lobby had already spread across local pages. Not the whole thing. Only the part where Brenda shoved the woman backward near the entrance. The slap itself was blurry. The comments were worse. "Crazy woman causes scene at police station." Another anti-cop setup. "People always record half the story," Craig laughed. Brenda smirked. "Good. Half is all they need." Behind them, Officer Lena Brooks sat stiffly at her desk pretending to type reports while secretly replaying the footage frame by frame. The comments kept growing faster. Then she paused suddenly. One frame. Half a second before the briefcase closed. A silver star-shaped object hidden inside. Lena's stomach tightened again. "You okay, Brooks?" Craig asked. Lena locked her screen immediately. "Fine." Craig pointed toward the hallway. "Captain wants everybody in the main hall in 10. Brenda straightened her uniform with a smug little smile. "Maybe the new chief will finally clean this circus up." Outside, Mayami stared at the appointment document still visible inside the briefcase. The city seal glowed pale blue beneath the dashboard light. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown message. "They will turn this against you." She ignored it. Instead, she looked at the cracked photograph of Marcus beside the files. 22 years old forever. She remembered the hospital hallway after his death. White walls. Coffee stains on the floor. An officer refusing to meet her eyes while repeating the word procedure over and over again. Procedure. As if grief could be filed into paperwork. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A little boy stood outside the car beneath a broken umbrella. Maybe 8 years old. Thin jacket. Shoes soaked through from rainwater. He pointed nervously toward her cheek. "Did the police do that to you?" Mayami lowered the window slightly. "Why would you ask that?" The boy shrugged. "My mom says people only get scared like that when cops yell at them." Behind him, his mother rushed over embarrassed. "Terrence, leave the lady alone." But the boy looked back one more time before leaving. "You did not look scared," he said quietly. For one brief moment, Mayami smiled. Small. Real. Then the smile faded as another siren screamed through the city. Across town inside Ridgemont Precinct, Captain Elliot Bryce paced alone inside his office. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. Complaint folders covered his desk like landmines. Holloway. Dawson. Excessive force. Missing bodycam footage. Witness intimidation. Every file he buried now felt radioactive. The phone rang again. City Councilwoman Diane Mercer this time. Bryce answered instantly. Councilwoman. Where is Chief Sullivan? Bryce swallowed hard. On her way. Good, Mercer replied sharply. Because reporters already know something happened at your station. Bryce looked through the office blinds toward the bullpen floor where Brenda laughed with two patrol officers. It was a misunderstanding. Mercer's voice turned cold. No, Captain. A misunderstanding is forgetting paperwork. Assaulting the incoming police chief is something else. Bryce closed his eyes for half a second. Outside his office, Brenda noticed the tension immediately. Something wrong, Captain, she called. Bryce forced a tight smile. Main hall. 5 minutes. Brenda shrugged like none of this concerned her. But as she turned away, her gaze caught Lena Brooks watching her too carefully. You got a problem? Brenda asked. No, ma'am. Then quit looking at me like that. Lena lowered her eyes. But her fingers quietly tightened around a folded maintenance request form sitting beside her keyboard. Camera 4 audio system repaired last month. Brenda never saw it. The intercom crackled overhead again. All officers report immediately. The bullpen slowly emptied. Boots echoed across tile. Radios hissed. Chairs scraped backward. One by one, officers moved toward the main hall. Meanwhile, Mayami finally started the engine of her old sedan. The windshield wipers dragged slowly across the glass. Her cheek still burned red beneath the dim light. On the passenger seat, the digital recorder blinked softly beside Marcus's photograph. Then her phone rang again. This time the caller ID made her eyes narrow. Ridgemont Internal Affairs. She answered calmly. Sullivan speaking. A tense male voice came through the line. Ma'am, there is something you need to know before you walk back into that building. Rainwater rolled down the precinct windows in crooked silver lines while Captain Elliot Bryce locked his office door from the inside. Say it again, he demanded into the phone. The voice from Internal Affairs stayed low and tense. Camera 4 was repaired 3 weeks ago. Bryce went still. Completely still. Outside his office, officers crossed the bullpen toward the main hall laughing and talking over one another, unaware their captain had suddenly gone pale. Who else knows? Bryce asked. Nobody official yet. Keep it that way. He hung up immediately. But his eyes drifted toward the hallway where Brenda Holloway stood joking beside the coffee station. For the first time all morning, Captain Bryce looked afraid of one of his own officers. Across town, Mayami Sullivan drove through rain-slick streets toward the precinct again. The windshield wipers scraped slowly back and forth. Internal Affairs had told her one thing before disconnecting. Do not assume your body cam records are the only evidence in that building. That sentence stayed with her. She reached toward the passenger seat and opened one of the complaint folders beside Marcus's photograph. Missing footage. Corrupted audio. Witnesses changing statements after late-night patrol visits. Patterns. Always patterns. At a red light, Mayami suddenly grabbed a pen and circled one officer name in 3 separate reports. Craig Dawson. Same signature. Same typo every time. Detainment. Misspelled identically in all 3 files. She stared at it quietly. Then another detail clicked into place. Same timestamp on 2 different arrest reports filed 20 miles apart. Impossible. The light turned green. Cars behind her honked immediately. But Mayami did not move for 1 second. She was thinking. Inside the precinct main hall, rows of officers gathered beneath buzzing fluorescent lights. Some leaned casually against walls. Others whispered about the incoming chief. Brenda Holloway stood near the front like she owned the room already. Probably another politician in uniform, she muttered. Craig snorted beside her. Maybe they will give us sensitivity training and free cookies. A few officers laughed. Lena Brooks did not. She sat near the back with Camera 4's maintenance request folded tightly inside her pocket. Her knee bounced nervously under the chair. Then Brenda noticed. "Brooks," she called sharply. "Why do you look like somebody died?" Lena forced a weak smile. "Long shift." Brenda narrowed her eyes but let it go. Upstairs in the security office, an overweight civilian tech named Marty Jensen stared at his monitor with growing confusion. Camera 4's archive had reactivated automatically after the intercom announcement. A blinking yellow notification appeared across the screen. Audio recovery available. Marty clicked it once. Static filled the speakers. Then voices. Brenda's voice. Loud. Angry. "Trash like you has rights in my station." Marty frowned deeply. He dragged the timeline backward. The image froze on the black woman standing in the lobby with rain dripping from her coat sleeve. "Who the hell are you?" he muttered quietly. Downstairs, the front doors opened again. Cold rain air swept into the precinct lobby. Conversations softened slightly. Naomi Sullivan walked back inside carrying the same leather briefcase. Same wet charcoal coat. Same red mark still faintly visible on her cheek. Brenda laughed the second she saw her. "You again?" Several officers turned immediately. A rookie near the hallway whispered, "That is the woman from the video." Craig cracked his knuckles slowly. "You really want another problem today?" Naomi ignored him. Her eyes moved calmly across the room instead. Front desk. Camera angle. Officer positions. Exit routes. Then she looked directly at Brenda. Under Departmental Intake Procedure 12.7, she said evenly, "A civilian requesting contact with command staff cannot legally be denied access without documented cause." Silence hit for half a second. Brenda blinked once. Craig frowned. Lena Brooks looked up sharply. Even Captain Bryce, stepping into the hallway at that exact moment, stopped moving. Brenda recovered fast. "You memorizing laws from the internet now?" she snapped. Miami's voice stayed calm. "No. I memorized yours." That landed harder than yelling would have. Officers exchanged glances. Tiny ones. Nervous ones. For one dangerous second, the room tilted away from Brenda's control. Then she smiled coldly again. Cute speech. She stepped closer until her badge almost touched Miami's coat. "But you are still not walking past this lobby." Craig moved beside her immediately. "Maybe we should search the briefcase this time." Lena stood halfway from her chair. "Officer Dawson, without probable cause you cannot, sit down, Brooks." Brenda never looked away from Naomi. "Open the bag." Naomi tightened one hand around the leather handle. "No." Brenda's smile widened. "Then maybe you are hiding something." Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen leaned closer toward the monitor as the recovered audio continued playing through static. His face slowly changed. Because buried beneath Brenda's shouting, another sound had become clear. The sharp crack of a slap. Then a calm female voice. "You should be very careful what happens next, officer." Marty's eyes widened slightly. Downstairs, Craig suddenly grabbed the briefcase strap. The latch snapped loose for half a second. Papers shifted inside. A polished silver badge wrapped partly in dark cloth slid briefly into view beneath the fluorescent lights. And Captain Bryce saw it. Captain Bryce saw the silver badge for less than a second. But that was enough. His face drained of color so fast Lena Brooks felt her stomach twist. Craig Dawson grabbed the briefcase strap harder before the latch snapped shut again. "Well, look at that," Craig said loudly. "Now she is carrying fake badges too." Several officers nearby turned immediately. Whispers spread through the bullpen like smoke. Fake cop. Impersonation. Mental case. Brenda Holloway stepped closer with a cruel smile growing slowly across her face. That explains the attitude. She pointed directly at Mayami. You walk in here pretending to know procedure because you bought some costume badge online. Mayami held the briefcase firmly against her side. You do not have probable cause to search my personal property. Brenda barked a laugh. You think quoting policy makes you special? No, Mayami answered calmly. I think officers should follow the law. That landed badly. Craig shook his head dramatically toward the watching officers. Hear that? She is lecturing cops inside a police station. A few nervous laughs followed. Most people stayed silent. But not because they believed Brenda anymore. Because they were starting to notice things they could not explain. The way Captain Bryce would not meet Mayami's eyes. The way Lena Brooks looked ready to throw up. The way Mayami herself stood perfectly still while surrounded by armed officers. No panic. No desperation. Just control. Brenda noticed the shift too. And she hated it immediately. All right, she snapped. New rule. Nobody records anything in this lobby. One rookie officer hesitated. Ma'am, civilians are allowed to. Did I ask for your opinion? Silence again. Brenda pointed toward a teenage boy holding up his phone near the waiting chairs. You. Put it away. The boy lowered it instantly. Craig stepped around Mayami now, cutting off her path toward the hallway. You know what I think, he said. I think you came here looking for attention. Move, Mayami said quietly. Craig smirked wider. Make me. Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen replayed the recovered lobby footage again and again. Audio levels bounced across the monitor. Brenda yelling. The slap. Then another sound underneath the chaos. A sharp electronic chirp. Marty paused the clip carefully. Zoomed in. The woman's briefcase shifted during the impact. Something inside flashed red twice. Recording device active. Marty sat back slowly. Oh no, he whispered. Downstairs, Brenda crossed her arms. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to hand over that bag, answer a few questions, and leave quietly before I charge you with impersonating an officer. On what evidence? Mayami asked. Brenda smiled coldly. I do not need evidence to remove a threat from my precinct. The old man clutching eviction papers near the front desk suddenly spoke up. Quiet at first. She did not threaten anybody. Every head turned toward him instantly. Brenda's expression hardened. Excuse me. The old man swallowed hard but continued. I was here the whole time. She only asked for a badge number. For one tiny second, hope flickered through the room. Human. Fragile. Then Brenda stepped toward him so fast his voice died immediately. You want to spend the night downtown interfering with police operations? The old man looked away. No, officer. That is what I thought. Brenda turned back toward the crowd triumphantly. Anybody else? Nobody answered. Not the mother holding her child. Not the teenage girl with dried blood on her sleeve. Not the rookies staring at the floor. Fear sealed the room shut again. Captain Bryce finally stepped forward. Officer Holloway, he said carefully, perhaps we should handle this privately. Brenda frowned slightly. Why? Bryce glanced once toward the briefcase. Because this situation is already attracting attention. Brenda misunderstood immediately. She thought he meant media pressure. Not danger. Good, she snapped. Let them watch. She pointed toward Mayami again. People are tired of scammers pretending to be victims. Craig nodded eagerly beside her. Open the bag or leave in cuffs. Lena Brooks suddenly stood. Chair scraping hard against tile. You cannot threaten arrest without a charge. Brenda turned slowly toward her. Dangerous now. Brooks. Lena's voice shook but held. Department policy requires, I know department policy better than you. Brenda stepped closer. Sit down before I write you up for insubordination. Lena froze. Around the room, officers watched carefully. Nobody moved to help her. Miami looked at Lena for one brief second. Calm. Steady. Then she spoke quietly toward Brenda. You are making this worse every minute. Brenda laughed directly in her face. No. I am ending it. She reached for the briefcase again. This time Captain Bryce grabbed her wrist sharply before she could touch it. The room went dead silent. Even Craig stopped smiling. Brenda stared at Bryce in disbelief. Captain. Bryce released her immediately, realizing too late what he had just revealed. Nobody touches the bag, he said tightly. Brenda's eyes narrowed. Why not? Bryce opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen printed a still frame from camera 4. The image showed Brenda's hand mid-slap. The timestamp glowed clearly at the bottom corner. He stared at it for 2 long seconds before quietly reaching for his phone. Downstairs, Craig suddenly pointed toward the corner of Miami's briefcase. Wait. His voice sharpened. What the hell is that? One folded document had slipped partly free during the struggle. Across the top, beneath the city seal, only 3 words were visible before Miami pulled it back inside. Appointment of police. The bullpen froze around those 3 visible words. Appointment of police. Craig Dawson grabbed for the document immediately. Miami pulled the briefcase shut before he could touch it. Too late. Half the room had seen it. Brenda Holloway's smirk flickered for the first time all day. Police what? Craig demanded loudly. Police volunteer. A few officers laughed too quickly. Nervous laughter now. Not confident. Captain Bryce stepped forward fast. Enough. His voice cracked harder than he intended. That made things worse. Brenda turned slowly toward him. Why are you sweating, Captain? Bryce ignored her completely. His eyes stayed locked on the briefcase. Ma'am, he said carefully toward Miami, perhaps we should continue this discussion privately. Brenda blinked once. Then twice. She finally heard it. Respect. Tiny. Controlled. But there. Privately, she repeated sharply. Since when do we escort trespassers into private meetings? Miami answered before Bryce could. Since your department policies require chain-of-command review before confiscating legal documents. Her voice stayed calm. Exact. Surgical. Officer Lena Brooks stared openly now. Nobody quoted policy numbers from memory like that unless they lived inside the system. Craig tried to recover control fast. Anybody can memorize rules online. Not like that, Lena whispered before she could stop herself. Brenda snapped toward her instantly. Excuse me. Lena swallowed hard. Nothing, ma'am. Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen printed another still frame from camera 4. The recovered audio waveform continued crawling across his monitor. He enlarged the timestamp carefully. Then his eyes widened. The camera had captured more than the lobby. Reflected faintly in the glass entrance behind the woman stood a city-issued black sedan parked at the curb. Government plates. Marty leaned closer. What the hell? Downstairs, Brenda stepped directly into Miami's path again. Open the bag now. No, then you are obstructing an investigation. You do not have an investigation. That hit harder than expected. Several officers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Brenda's jaw tightened. You think you are smarter than cops? I think procedure exists for a reason. Another silence. Sharp this time. Dangerous. The teenage girl near the vending machine suddenly spoke up quietly. She asked for your badge number before you hit her. Brenda whipped around so fast the girl shrank backward into her chair. Nobody asked you anything. The girl looked down immediately. Fear sealed her mouth shut again. Have you ever noticed how fast people stop telling the truth when power enters the room? Captain Bryce rubbed one trembling hand across his forehead. Officer Holloway, he said tightly, step away from her. Brenda laughed in disbelief. You are taking her side. I am telling you to de-escalate. Craig pointed toward the briefcase again. Captain, you saw the document. She is hiding something. Exactly, Brenda added coldly. Which means we search it. Mayami adjusted her grip slightly. Calm. Controlled. Then one corner of the briefcase shifted open again under the pressure. A tiny digital recorder slid partly into view beside the folded appointment document. Red light blinking softly. Recording active. Lena Brooks saw it first. Then Bryce. Then Brenda. The room changed instantly. Brenda's face hardened. You recorded officers inside this station? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Craig scoffed loudly. Illegal. No, Mayami replied evenly. Not in a public lobby with no expectation of privacy. Bryce closed his eyes briefly. He knew she was right. Brenda did not. Or pretended not to. Cute trick, she snapped. A hidden recorder does not prove anything. It proves enough to make you nervous, Mayami said quietly. That landed like a punch. Nobody spoke for 2 full seconds. What do you think Brenda Holloway was really afraid of right then? The recorder? The document? Or the fact that somebody in that room suddenly sounded more like command staff than she did? Brenda recovered with anger. The kind people use when panic starts leaking through. Give me the recorder. No, Craig. Craig moved instantly beside her. Bigger obstacle now. Bigger threat. He reached toward his radio. Dispatch, send 2 more officers to the bullpen. Lena stood again. Why are we escalating this? Brenda rounded on her. Because this woman came into my station carrying fake police documents and illegally recording officers. That is not what happened, Lena shot back before fear could stop her. The room reacted immediately. Heads turning. Breath catching. Brenda walked toward Lena slowly now. Careful, Brooks. Lena's hands trembled at her sides, but she did not sit down this time. Upstairs, Marty Jensen grabbed his phone and typed one shaking message to Internal Affairs. Camera 4 recovered everything. Before he could hit send, his office door suddenly opened behind him. Marty turned sharply. Officer Craig Dawson stood there staring at the monitor. Craig Dawson filled the doorway of the security office like a threat wearing a badge. Marty Jensen's hand froze above his phone. The monitor behind him still displayed the recovered camera 4 footage. Brenda's raised hand. The blurred impact. The woman standing perfectly still afterward. Craig's eyes narrowed immediately. What are you doing? Marty swallowed hard. Routine maintenance review. Craig stepped closer. Funny timing. Downstairs, the bullpen had gone tense and ugly. Officers whispered in corners. Phones disappeared into pockets whenever Brenda looked their way. Mayami Sullivan stood alone near the front desk with her briefcase held tightly against her side while rainwater slowly dried across her coat. The red mark on her cheek had darkened faintly beneath the fluorescent lights. Brenda noticed it too. You should have left when I told you, she said coldly. You keep pushing this and you are going to regret it. Mayami answered quietly. I already regret it. Brenda smirked. Good. But Mayami was not looking at her anymore. Her eyes had drifted toward the faded memorial plaque mounted beside the hallway entrance. Officer James Sullivan. End of watch, 1998. The room blurred around her for one small moment. A younger Mayami standing beside a folded flag. Her father's badge resting in her trembling hands. Reporters asking if the department would investigate corruption claims linked to his death. Nobody ever did. Her father died believing the badge meant honor. Marcus died learning some officers treated it like armor against consequences. Mayami reached unconsciously toward the silver watch on her wrist. Old. Scratched. Her father's watch. The same one he wore the night he never came home. Lena Brooks noticed the gesture immediately. You knew Officer Sullivan, she asked softly before she could stop herself. Brenda rolled her eyes. Great. Now she is pretending personal connections too. Mayami looked at the plaque for another second. He was one of the few officers in this building who understood what the badge was supposed to mean. Silence. Heavy silence. Even some older officers shifted uncomfortably now. Because they remembered James Sullivan. Honest. Respected. Dead after reporting misconduct nobody wanted exposed. Craig came back downstairs suddenly from the security office. Too fast. Too angry. Marty Jensen followed behind him looking pale. Camera 4 is offline again, Craig announced loudly. Corrupted file. Brenda's smile returned immediately. There it is. She folded her arms proudly toward the room. No evidence. Marty opened his mouth slightly like he wanted to speak. Craig shot him a look sharp enough to shut him down instantly. Tiny Hope died in real time. See? Brenda said toward Mayami. All this drama for nothing. But Mayami noticed something others missed. Marty's hands were shaking. Not from guilt. From fear. She spoke calmly. The footage existed. Craig snapped back instantly. Not anymore. Interesting choice of words. That hit hard enough to make a rookie officer glance sideways at Craig. Brenda cut in fast. Enough. She pointed toward the exit doors. You are done here. No, Mayami answered quietly. Brenda laughed. You think standing here makes you brave? No. I think leaving would make this easier for you. The room went still again. Sharp words. Controlled words. The kind that sounded less like a civilian and more like command. Brenda stepped closer until they were inches apart. Listen carefully, she hissed. I do not care who you think you are. Around here, badges matter. Mayami's eyes dropped briefly toward Brenda's chest badge. Then toward the memorial plaque again. Some badges do, she said softly. That line landed differently. Older officers looked away first. Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen quietly slipped a tiny flash drive into his jacket pocket while Craig barked at another tech across the room. The recovered camera 4 audio had not fully deleted before Craig cut the system. Part of it survived. Marty knew it. And now he was terrified somebody else would know too. Downstairs, Captain Bryce finally approached Mayami directly. His voice lowered almost to a whisper. You should not have come alone. Brenda frowned immediately. Captain, what the hell does that mean? Bryce ignored her. His eyes stayed fixed on Mayami's briefcase. There are people in this building who will destroy evidence to protect themselves. Brenda's face darkened. You accusing officers now? I am stating facts. The room reacted instantly. Officers shifting. Radios crackling. Fear moving beneath the surface like electricity. Then Miami slowly opened the briefcase just enough to slide Marcus's cracked photograph partly into view beside the hidden recorder and folded appointment document. Captain Bryce saw the young man's face and froze completely. "Marcus," he whispered before he could stop himself. Brenda looked sharply between them. "Who the hell is Marcus?" Bryce stared at the photograph like he had just seen a ghost from 20 years ago. Then the overhead intercom crackled violently through the precinct. "Captain Bryce, report to main hall immediately. City council representatives have arrived." Every officer in the bullpen turned at once. And Brenda Holloway finally realized this situation was becoming bigger than she understood. The bullpen exploded into motion the second the intercom announced the city council representatives had arrived. Officers straightened uniforms. Coffee cups vanished. Phones disappeared into pockets. Captain Bryce wiped sweat from his forehead and moved toward the main hall fast. Brenda Holloway followed beside him like she already owned the room. "Do not worry, Captain," she said loudly enough for nearby officers to hear. "I will handle the trespasser." Miami Sullivan stood still near the front desk while people moved around her like she was invisible and dangerous at the same time. The teenage girl near the vending machine stared at her with quiet confusion. The old man with eviction papers avoided eye contact completely now. Fear had chosen a side again. Craig Dawson stepped directly in front of Miami and pointed toward the exit doors. "You heard the intercom. Important people are arriving." "I know," Miami answered calmly. Craig smirked. "Then get out before security escorts you." Brenda grabbed the moment immediately. "Actually no." She looked around the bullpen theatrically. "I want everyone to see this." Officers slowed down. Curious now. Brenda turned toward the room and raised her voice. "This woman entered our precinct carrying fake police documents, illegally recording officers, and refusing lawful instructions." Murmurs spread instantly. Fake documents. Illegal recording. Trespassing. The words traveled faster than truth ever did. One rookie officer whispered, "Maybe she is one of those sovereign citizen people." Another muttered, "She sounded too educated for that." Brenda heard neither. She was performing now. People think they can walk into police stations and intimidate officers with lawsuits and fake badges. She pointed at Miami's cheek coldly. Then they cry victim when somebody pushes back. A few officers nodded automatically. Not because they believed her fully anymore. Because Brenda still wore the badge openly. Power makes lies sound official. Miami said nothing for several seconds. Then quietly, "You still have not asked for my identification." That landed badly again. Sharp. Precise. Captain Bryce stopped halfway toward the hallway. Brenda recovered fast. "Because liars carry fake IDs too." Craig laughed loudly beside her. "Maybe she printed one at home." The room reacted with scattered nervous laughter. False victory. Brenda felt it building and leaned into it harder. "Officer Dawson, escort her outside." "Gladly." Craig reached for Miami's arm. She stepped back once. "Calm. Controlled. Do not touch me again." "Or what?" Craig challenged. "You going to quote another policy?" Miami's eyes locked on his. Section 4B. Use of force becomes unlawful when there is no active threat. Silence flickered again. Tiny. Dangerous. Lena Brooks looked around the room and realized other officers were noticing it too. This woman knew procedure better than half the department. Brenda saw the doubt spreading and crushed it instantly. Enough legal cosplay. She pointed toward the front desk computer. "Run her name then." Bryce turned sharply. "No, too fast. Too emotional." The entire bullpen caught it. Brenda narrowed her eyes slowly. "Why not, Captain?" Bryce hesitated 1 second too long. Because this is already becoming a media issue. Exactly, Brenda snapped. So let us prove she is lying. Tiny hope appeared for one dangerous second when Lena quietly stepped toward the desk terminal. But Craig moved immediately, blocking her path. Captain said no. Lena looked between Bryce and Miami. What are we protecting? Nobody answered. Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen finally hit send on the message to Internal Affairs. Camera 4 recovered partial audio and video. Seconds later, his computer screen flashed red. Access override initiated. Someone else was already inside the system. Marty whispered, No, back downstairs. Brenda grabbed a blank incident report and slammed it onto the counter. Sign this. Miami glanced at the paper. Disturbing police operations. I did not commit this violation. Brenda smiled cruelly. Sign it anyway. No, Brenda leaned closer. Then maybe resisting officers gets added too. The crowd shifted uneasily. Phones appeared again. Someone near the hallway started recording secretly. The atmosphere had changed from confusion into spectacle. Brenda enjoyed every second of it. Look around, she announced loudly. Nobody here believes you belong in this building. That one stung because the room stayed silent afterward. Nobody defended Miami. Not publicly. Not yet. Even Lena looked trapped between fear and conscience. Then Miami spoke softly. That silence is exactly why places like this become dangerous. Several older officers looked down immediately. Brenda slammed her hand against the counter. Escort her out now. Craig grabbed Miami's arm harder this time. The briefcase slipped partly open during the movement. A folded city document slid halfway onto the floor. Captain Bryce saw the official seal first. Then one line beneath it. Effective immediately by order of the city council, Bryce's breathing stopped for half a second. But before anyone else could read further, Brenda snatched the paper off the floor and crumpled it in her fist. Fake, she declared instantly. Then she tossed it toward the trash can beside the front desk. The room watched the document arc through the air. And Captain Bryce suddenly shouted louder than anyone had ever heard before. Do not touch that paper. Captain Bryce's shout ripped across the bullpen hard enough to stop every conversation instantly. Do not touch that paper. Brenda Holloway froze with the crumpled document halfway between her fingers and the trash can. The room turned toward Bryce slowly. Confused. Suspicious. Craig Dawson frowned immediately. Captain, why? Bryce stepped forward too quickly. Because it is evidence. Wrong answer. Brenda's eyes narrowed like a trap snapping shut. Evidence of what? Nobody answered fast enough. That silence cost them. Brenda smiled coldly and unfolded the paper just enough to glance at the city seal again. You know what I think, she announced loudly to the entire bullpen. I think this woman forged official documents and hoped nobody here would notice. Murmurs spread again. Forged documents. Fake appointment papers. The crowd wanted the simple explanation. The explanation that protected the badge. Craig pointed toward Miami like a prosecutor before a jury. This is felony impersonation. Brenda nodded immediately. And now she is interfering with an active police station. She held the paper up higher. This right here. This is fraud. The old man near the front desk quietly backed farther away. The teenage girl lowered her eyes. Even some officers who doubted Brenda stayed silent now. Fear and hierarchy were winning again. Miami stood completely still in the center of it all. Wet coat. Red mark on her cheek. Leather briefcase clutched against her side like the last thing she still trusted. Return the document, she said quietly. Brenda laughed directly in her face. Or what? It does not belong to you. Neither does this precinct. That line got a few ugly laughs from the back of the room. Brenda fed off them instantly. Officer Dawson. Yeah. Cuff her. The room shifted sharply. Chairs scraped. Radios hissed. Lena Brooks stood up so fast her chair slammed backward onto the floor. No. Every head turned toward her. Brenda stared in disbelief. You really want to ruin your career over this woman? Lena's hands trembled. We do not even know who she is. Exactly, Brenda snapped. Which means she is a threat. Craig pulled handcuffs from his belt slowly. Deliberately. Metal clicking loud enough for the entire bullpen to hear. Several officers looked away. Nobody wanted to watch. But nobody stepped in either. False victory settled over the room like smoke. Brenda believed she had won. The crowd was with her. The evidence was in her hand. The woman was about to leave in cuffs. Power had chosen its story. Miami finally spoke again. Calm. Low. If you put those cuffs on me, every officer in this room becomes part of what happens next. Silence hit for half a second. Sharp enough to cut. Craig hesitated. Tiny. Barely visible. But Brenda saw it and crushed it immediately. Do it. Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen reopened the corrupted footage using an emergency backup server. Static rolled across the monitor. Then one clear frame appeared. The woman standing under the lobby lights. Brenda's hand raised. And reflected in the glass entrance behind them, the city sedan door hanging open. On the inside panel, barely visible beneath rainwater, was an official department crest. Marty leaned closer. No way, downstairs, Craig grabbed Miami's wrist. Hard. The briefcase slipped from her other hand and crashed onto the tile floor. The latch burst fully open this time. Everything spilled out at once. Complaint files. Marcus's cracked photograph. The silver recorder blinking red. And the polished silver badge wrapped partly in dark cloth. Gasps moved through the bullpen instantly. Real gasps now. Not whispers. Brenda stared at the badge for one frozen second. Then recovered fast. Fake, she barked immediately. Craig kicked the recorder away across the floor before anyone could reach it. The tiny device spun beneath the waiting chairs. Brenda pointed toward Miami triumphantly. Everybody sees this now, right? She raised the folded document higher. This woman came armed with fake credentials and hidden recordings. That badge is real. The voice came from the back of the room. Weak. Shaking. Marty Jensen stood near the hallway entrance holding a printed still frame from camera 4 in one trembling hand. Craig turned instantly. Shut up, Marty. But Marty kept walking forward. I recovered part of the footage before the system got cut. Brenda's face darkened instantly. You were told the file was corrupted. It was deleted, Marty whispered. Not corrupted. The bullpen exploded into whispers again. Officers turning toward each other. Somebody muttered, deleted by who? Tiny hope flickered dangerously through the room. Then Brenda stepped forward and ripped the printed still frame from Marty's hand before anyone else could see it clearly. Enough. Her voice thundered now. This circus ends right now. She pointed toward the front entrance. Officer Dawson, remove her from my station. Craig yanked Miami's arm harder and pushed her toward the doors. Several officers stepped aside automatically to clear a path. Nobody stopped him. Nobody challenged Brenda. Even Captain Bryce looked trapped now. Defeated. Miami bent slightly during the struggle just long enough to retrieve one thing from the floor before Craig dragged her farther. Not the badge. Not the document. The tiny red recorder. Brenda noticed too late. "Take that from her," she shouted. Craig reached again. Then suddenly the precinct lights flickered once. Every monitor in the bullpen blinked black for half a second before one giant screen above the front desk powered back on by itself. Static recovery complete. The giant monitor above the front desk flickered violently as static rolled across the screen in gray waves. Every officer in the bullpen froze mid-motion. Craig Dawson still had one hand clamped around Naomi Sullivan's arm. Brenda Holloway turned sharply toward the monitor. "Who touched that system?" Nobody answered. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while the screen fought to stabilize. Static recovery complete. Then the first frozen image appeared. The lobby entrance. Rain against glass. Brenda standing inches from Naomi. The entire bullpen went quiet. Not fully silent yet. But close. "Turn it off," Brenda snapped immediately. No one moved. Upstairs in the security office, Marty Jensen's trembling hand hovered over the keyboard. It rebooted through backup servers, he whispered to himself. "I did not trigger this." Downstairs, Captain Bryce slowly stepped toward the monitor like a man walking toward a loaded weapon. "Nobody touched the system," he ordered. This time his voice carried differently. Authority mixed with fear. Brenda heard both. "Captain, this footage is compromised," she shot back fast. The audio was corrupted. Marty's voice crackled through the overhead speaker from the security office before fear could stop him. "Not corrupted." Every head tilted upward toward the ceiling speaker. Marty swallowed audibly. "Deleted." The bullpen shifted hard at that word. Officers exchanged looks. Somebody near the hallway quietly lowered their phone camera. Brenda recovered instantly. "You are accusing officers based on half a file." "I am stating what the logs show," Marty answered weakly. Craig squeezed Naomi's arm tighter. "This is ridiculous." But his voice had changed too. The confidence inside it was cracking now. On the monitor, the frozen image suddenly advanced forward 3 seconds. Brenda's mouth moving. Craig laughing in the background. The teenage girl near the vending machine slowly stood from her chair, eyes fixed on the screen. The old man clutching eviction papers took one careful step backward like he already knew something ugly was about to become public. Naomi said nothing. She simply held the tiny recorder tightly in one hand while the other rested against her worn leather briefcase. Calm. Still calm. Even now. That frightened Brenda more than the screen did. "You planned this," Brenda accused sharply. "You came here looking for a lawsuit." Naomi finally looked at her. "No," her voice stayed soft. "I came here looking for the truth." The room quieted another degree. One rookie officer muttered under his breath, "Jesus." On screen, the footage advanced again. Brenda stepping closer. Finger pointed directly into Naomi's face. No audio yet. Only image. But image was enough to change the air inside the room. Captain Bryce stared at the screen without blinking. Lena Brooks noticed his hand trembling slightly at his side. Tiny Hope entered the bullpen quietly now. Officers were starting to doubt the official story. A mother near the waiting chairs whispered to her son, "Do not say anything." The child whispered back, but she did not do anything wrong. Brenda heard him. "Enough." She pointed toward the monitor. "This proves nothing." Then she turned toward Craig. "Take her outside now." Craig pulled Naomi forward again. But this time the movement triggered something else. The silver badge wrapped in dark cloth slipped halfway from the open briefcase and hit the floor with a hard metallic crack. The sound echoed through the bullpen like a dropped weapon. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Even Craig let go of Naomi's arm for 1 second. The badge had landed face up beneath the fluorescent lights. Official seal. For engraved stars around the edge. Not fake. Not plastic. Real. Brenda stared at it too long before forcing herself to laugh. Good replica. But her voice shook slightly. Captain Bryce bent down slowly and picked it up with both hands. The room watched him carefully. Closely. His fingers tightened around the metal. He recognized it instantly. Captain. Lena whispered. Bryce did not answer. He kept staring at the badge like it weighed 50 pounds. What do you think Brenda Holloway was feeling right then? Fear? Denial? Or the realization that the woman she slapped never once begged for mercy because she never needed it? Upstairs, Marty Jensen reopened the audio recovery panel. Green bars crawled slowly across the monitor. Audio repair, 92% complete. Downstairs, Brenda stepped toward Bryce aggressively. Sir, give me the badge. Bryce looked up sharply. No, one word. Flat. Final. That changed the room more than the footage had. Craig looked between them in confusion. Captain, what is going on? Brenda's voice rose louder now. This woman forged credentials and manipulated evidence. Then why are you panicking? Lena asked quietly. Brenda turned toward her instantly. Watch yourself. No, Lena answered this time without sitting down. I think we all should. Several officers looked away from Brenda for the first time all day. The balance inside the bullpen was shifting. Slowly. Dangerously. Then the giant monitor crackled again. Static vanished completely. Audio connected. Brenda's own voice thundered suddenly through the entire precinct. Trash like you has rights in my station. The room went dead silent. Completely silent. On screen, the footage continued rolling toward the moment of the slap. And Captain Bryce slowly lifted the badge higher into the light just as the main entrance doors swung open behind everyone. The precinct doors slammed open behind the crowd. Cold rain air rushed through the bullpen as 3 city council representatives stepped inside flanked by uniformed command officers. Their polished shoes echoed across the tile floor. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Captain Bryce still held the silver badge in both hands beneath the fluorescent lights while the giant monitor replayed Brenda Holloway's voice over the recovered lobby footage. Trash like you has rights in my station. The word sounded uglier the second time. More real. Councilwoman Diane Mercer stopped walking the instant she heard them. Her eyes shifted from the monitor, to the badge in Bryce's hands, then finally to the woman standing beside Craig Dawson. Wet coat. Red mark on her cheek. Calm eyes. Everything in Mercer's expression changed at once. Release her, Mercer said quietly. Craig frowned. Ma'am. Now. The room held its breath. Craig slowly let go of Naomi Sullivan's arm. Brenda stepped forward immediately, desperate to regain control. Councilwoman, this woman forged credentials and illegally entered. Enough. Mercer's voice cracked through the bullpen like glass breaking. Brenda stopped talking. The giant monitor continued playing overhead. On screen, officers watched themselves laugh while a woman stood alone in the lobby asking for a badge number. The room could not escape itself anymore. Captain Bryce finally stepped toward Naomi and handed her the silver badge back with both hands. Respectful. Careful. Public. Gasps rippled through the bullpen. One rookie officer whispered, "Oh my God." Brenda's face lost color instantly. "No," she said softly. "No, that is not." Mercer turned slowly toward the room. "Every officer here will stand down and listen carefully." Phones lowered. Radios went silent. Even the buzzing fluorescent lights suddenly felt too loud. Naomi looked down at the badge in her hand for one long second before pinning it calmly onto the inside of her coat. 4 silver stars caught the light. Real. Official. Undeniable. Then Mercer spoke the words that shattered the room completely. This is Chief Miami Sullivan. Silence. Pure silence. The kind that physically changes the air. Brenda Holloway staggered backward one small step before catching herself against a desk. Craig Dawson's mouth opened slightly but no sound came out. Lena Brooks closed her eyes briefly like her body had finally released hours of tension at once. The old man clutching eviction papers whispered, "Jesus," on the monitor above them. The footage reached the moment of the slap. Brenda's hand striking the incoming police chief across the face in full view of the precinct. Audible gasps spread across the bullpen. Somebody near the hallway muttered, "She hit the chief." Brenda recovered first. Panic wrapped in anger now. Nobody told us who she was. Chief Sullivan finally looked directly at her. That was the point. Another silence. Heavier than before. Mercer stepped beside Miami. Chief Sullivan entered this station intentionally without uniform identification in order to evaluate civilian treatment protocols inside Ridgemont Precinct. Brenda shook her head violently. This is a setup. No, Miami answered calmly. This is a mirror. The words landed like a verdict. Craig tried one last time to save himself. The footage does not show the whole situation. Marty Jensen's voice suddenly echoed from the overhead speakers again. Stronger this time. Actually it does. Every eye snapped upward. Marty appeared on the giant monitor live from the security office holding backup files in shaking hands. Camera 4 recorded everything before deletion attempts were made. Brenda spun toward the screen. Deletion attempts. Marty swallowed hard. System logs traced unauthorized access through Officer Dawson's credentials. Craig's face went white instantly. That is not possible. Marty held up another screen capture. Timestamp. Login ID. Dawson, Craig M. The bullpen erupted into whispers. Officers stepping away from Craig physically now. Nobody wanted to stand beside him anymore. Brenda pointed wildly toward Marty on the screen. You are lying. No, Marty whispered. I was scared. Miami stepped forward slowly into the center of the bullpen. Not triumphant. Not cruel. Just steady. Fear is how places like this stay broken. Brenda's breathing had become shallow now. Desperate. Chief. I did not know. You knew enough to humiliate a civilian without cause. Brenda tried again. We thought she was trespassing. Captain Bryce finally spoke. She asked for badge numbers and command staff access. Department policy required intake review. Brenda turned toward him in disbelief. You are siding with her. Bryce stared at her coldly. I am siding with the truth. The power in the room had fully reversed now. Officers who laughed earlier stood frozen and ashamed. The teenage girl near the vending machines looked at Miami differently now. Not with pity. With respect. Then Mercer reached into her folder and pulled out another document. Thick cream paper stamped with the city seal. Chief Sullivan, she said formally, loud enough for the entire precinct to hear, before we proceed with disciplinary actions, there is one more matter the officers in this building deserve to know. Brenda's eyes widened in panic. Because for the first time all day, she realized the slap was not the worst thing hidden inside this story. The bullpen stayed frozen after Councilwoman Diane Mercer lifted the city document into the light. Nobody spoke. Nobody even shifted their feet. Brenda Holloway stared at the paper like it might somehow change if she looked hard enough. It did not. Mercer's voice cut through the silence with cold precision. Before Chief Sullivan was appointed to lead Ridgemont Precinct, she was assigned by the City Council to investigate civilian misconduct complaints tied to this department. Murmurs spread instantly. Investigate. Complaints. Department. Brenda's breathing turned uneven. Craig Dawson looked toward the exits like he was already calculating escape routes. Mercer continued. Officer Brenda Holloway appeared in 6 excessive force complaints. Brenda snapped immediately. Those complaints were cleared. By reports filed under falsified timestamps, Marty Jensen interrupted from the overhead monitor. Craig went pale again. The giant screen behind them switched from lobby footage to department logs. Login records. Deleted files. Camera overrides. Dawson, Craig M., repeated line after line across the screen. Officers in the bullpen slowly stepped farther away from Craig without even realizing they were doing it. Status reversal had begun. Craig shook his head violently. I did not delete anything. Marty swallowed hard. The server says you did. Brenda pointed toward the monitor desperately. This is manipulated. Captain Bryce finally faced her fully. No, he said quietly. This is what happens when evidence survives. That line killed the last bit of confidence left in the room. Phones lowered completely now. Nobody recorded anymore. They just watched. Watched Brenda Holloway lose control of the story she thought she owned. Councilwoman Mercer stepped closer to Chief Sullivan. Ma'am, she said formally, do you wish to make a statement before disciplinary proceedings begin? Every eye turned toward Mayami. She stood beneath the fluorescent lights with Marcus's cracked photograph still visible beside the recovered recorder inside her open briefcase. Her father's silver watch glinted softly at her wrist. She looked at Brenda for one long second before speaking. This was never about me. Silence deepened again. Every person who walked into this station deserved dignity before anyone knew their title. Several officers lowered their eyes immediately. The teenage girl near the vending machines wiped tears from her face quietly. The old man clutching eviction papers sat down slowly like his legs could no longer hold him. Brenda laughed weakly. Desperately. You set us up. Chief Sullivan shook her head once. No. I gave you a normal citizen. That hit harder than any punishment could have. Mercer nodded toward 2 internal affairs officers who had just entered through the side hallway. Dark suits. Expressionless faces. Officer Brenda Holloway. Officer Craig Dawson. Remove your badges. Craig stared in disbelief. Right now. Immediately. Brenda's jaw clenched hard. You cannot humiliate officers publicly like this. Chief Sullivan answered quietly before Mercer could. You already did that yourselves. The bullpen went dead silent again. One internal affairs officer extended his hand. Brenda slowly unclipped her badge from her uniform. For years that metal had made civilians flinch when she entered a room. Now her hand trembled holding it. Craig removed his own next. Neither officer could meet anyone's eyes anymore. Captain Bryce looked physically older watching it happen. Your weapons will remain secured pending investigation, the internal affairs officer continued. You are suspended effective immediately. Brenda finally broke. Captain, say something. Bryce looked at her for a long moment. James Sullivan warned this department years ago that officers were abusing authority. Brenda's face tightened. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this. Bryce glanced toward Marcus's photograph inside the briefcase. First his father tried to stop it. Then his son paid for it. The room absorbed that quietly. Painfully. Chief Sullivan closed the briefcase gently around the photograph and recorder. Not hiding them anymore. Protecting them. Lena Brooks stepped forward carefully. Chief, it was the first time anyone in the building said the title without fear or confusion attached to it. Just respect. Lena swallowed hard. I am sorry nobody stopped it sooner. Mayami looked at her calmly. You stood up when it mattered. Brenda shook her head slowly like reality itself had become unstable. People are going to think we are monsters now. No, Chief Sullivan replied softly. They are going to think the badge finally answered to someone. Outside, rain still battered the station windows. But inside Ridgemont Precinct, something heavier had broken loose. Not just corruption. Silence. Mercer handed Chief Sullivan the official appointment folder at last. Thick cream paper. City seal shining under the lights. Ridgemont Precinct is now under your command. Officers instinctively straightened around the room. Not from fear this time. From recognition. Chief Sullivan accepted the folder quietly. Then her eyes drifted toward the front lobby where the frightened civilians still waited with complaint papers, missing person forms, and unanswered reports clutched tightly in their hands. The people this building had forgotten. And for the first time all day, Miami realized the hardest part was only beginning. Morning sunlight spilled through the front windows of Ridgemont Precinct for the first time in years without making the building feel cold. The rain had finally stopped overnight. Water still clung to the sidewalks outside in silver streaks while crews removed old complaint boxes from the lobby walls and replaced them with new civilian intake stations under fresh printed signs. Report every concern. Every voice matters. Inside the bullpen, the atmosphere had changed completely. Quiet now. Not fearful. Honest. Officers moved slower. More carefully. Nobody laughed when civilians approached the desk anymore. Nobody looked away when someone asked for help. Chief Miami Sullivan stood near the front counter in a clean Navy command uniform, for silver stars catching the soft morning light. The same lobby where she had been slapped now fell silent for an entirely different reason whenever she walked through it. Respect. Not fear. Respect. Near the hallway entrance, Officer Lena Brooks carefully pinned a new plaque beside the old department policies. Dignity is not optional. She stepped back to straighten it. Looks better there, she said quietly. Chief Sullivan glanced at the sign and nodded once. It belongs where people can see it. Across the room, the teenage girl from the vending machines sat with a victim advocate reviewing her case calmly. Nobody interrupted her this time. Nobody raised their voice. The old man with eviction papers now held a fresh folder stamped approved for assistance. He clutched it against his chest like something fragile and precious. Thank you, Chief, he whispered as she passed. Miami smiled softly. You should have been heard the first time. Nearby, Captain Bryce stood at the edge of the bullpen watching internal affairs officers carry away the final evidence boxes tied to Brenda Holloway and Craig Dawson's investigation. Brenda herself was gone now. Badge surrendered. Suspension confirmed pending criminal review. Craig too. Their laughter no longer echoed through the building. Only consequences did. Bryce looked older than before. But lighter somehow. James Sullivan would have been proud of you, he said quietly. Miami looked down at the silver watch on her wrist. Her father's watch. Then toward the cracked photograph of Marcus now resting safely inside her closed office desk. He deserved a department that listened to him. Bryce lowered his eyes. We failed him. Then do better for the next person. No anger. No cruelty. Just truth. That hurt more. In the newly reopened security office upstairs, Marty Jensen installed protected archive backups under direct city oversight. No more silent deletions. No more disappearing footage. Lena stepped inside carrying coffee for him. You did the right thing, she told him softly. Marty gave a weak laugh. Took me long enough. You still did it. Downstairs, a nervous young woman entered the precinct holding a crying little boy by the hand. Wet jacket. Cheap sneakers. Eyes already expecting rejection before she reached the desk. Several officers looked up automatically. Then paused. Old habits fighting new rules. Chief Sullivan noticed immediately. She stepped around the counter herself before anyone else could speak. The little boy looked up at her cautiously. "Are we in trouble?" he whispered. Mayami knelt slightly so she was eye level with him. "No," she answered gently. "You came to the right place." The mother's eyes filled instantly with tears she clearly had been holding back for too long. Behind them, several younger officers watched quietly. Learning. Really learning this time. Chief Sullivan guided them toward the intake desk personally. "Take their report first," she instructed. "And get the child something warm to drink." "Yes, Chief," Lena answered immediately. No hesitation. No arrogance. Just professionalism. As the mother sat down safely for the first time that morning, Mayami reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the tiny digital recorder that had survived everything. She looked at it for one long moment before placing it carefully into an evidence drawer marked Training Archive. Not as a weapon. As a reminder. The Silver Chief's badge rested steady against her uniform now. Not hidden anymore. Earned openly. Outside the front windows, sunlight slowly filled the same lobby where people once lowered their eyes in fear. Now civilians walked through the doors without stopping at the threshold first. And when the little boy looked back at Chief Sullivan before disappearing into the hallway with his mother, he smiled and waved. This time, the station waved back.